President Trump has moved to exert more executive control over so-called independent agencies, among them the Federal Communications Commission. Now, Congress created the FCC back in the 1930s. Its 5 commissioners come from both parties, 3-2 in favor of whoever's in the White House. For analysis of what Trump's plans might mean, we turn to a lawyer specializing in communication law and privacy, John Seiver. Mr. Seiver, good to have you with us.
Yes, thanks. Great to be here, Tom.
And you have written extensively with some of your colleagues from the firm of Davis Wright Tremaine, we should say, about both of these issues. And let's talk about the exertion of control over independent agencies. I guess there's been some successes and some pushback in some cases. What does this look like from a legal standpoint, what Trump is trying to do?
Well, first of all, what is going to happen at the FCC, I think, is already been shown to us that Brendan Carr is an author of Project 2025. He wrote the section on the FCC and about independent agencies. So I don't think there's going to be any conflict between the administration and the FCC. And one of the things that came out recently, and I know we want to talk about, the executive orders, but net neutrality. Is that a topic that I can just dive into for a moment?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, we want to get into eventually the management and function of the FCC. But yeah, net neutrality is a good case of where they have operated per whoever is in office. And so we've had this seesaw policy.
Right, which was in Loper Bright, which is for administrative lawyers, is the anti-Chevron deference. And what has happened is that, Commissioner Carr or Chairman Carr got his way. Now that net neutrality is gone, there are parties that might be able to seek. They sought rehearing, that was denied. Now they have until, I guess, early June to file a petition for cert with the Supreme Court if they really want to push it that far. There's another matter pending in the D.C. Circuit. But I think Chairman Carr's statement after the Sixth Circuit had thrown out the net neutrality rules indicates that, yes, as far as an independent agency is concerned, it may be independent of the administration, but is in line with the administration.
And net neutrality might indicate a trend that I don't know how to put it precisely, but it was such a divisive issue. And many people thought it was completely remote from what the FCC ought to be doing because it wasn't really a proper application of the Communications Act from the 1930s in the Internet age and so forth, and in a field where prices keep dropping and all of this. And with presidential direct control over more agencies, it might worsen the idea of constant seesawing of policy, which has really been whipsawing industry to its detriment for some time now.
Yes, and the whipsawing and the seesawing was in Justice Gorsuch's concurrence in the Supreme Court in the Loper Bright matter. The FCC's net neutrality back and forth between being an information service or a telecommunications service was the poster child for why Chevron deference, you cannot defer to administrative agencies anymore. And just as a historical matter, Tom, and I'm sorry, I do like to run down these rabbit holes, but as a historical matter, when Chevron deference was brought into play, it was because there was a concern that the agencies were going to be unfairly forced into doing liberal kind of projects. And with Congress and with an executive, they wanted to have the agency have more ability to do what it wanted to do when it was given authority. And now that's reversed. And now they're saying we don't want the agencies to have any authority. They're under the thumb of the administration and can be fired at will. We're going to see that tested. But I don't think anybody's going to get fired from the FCC. They've got their 3 majority. They got their chairman that they want, that our president wants. So we're in good shape for that.
We're speaking with John Seiver. He's senior counsel at Davis Wright Tremaine. And how then do you think, will there be any effect on the administrative processes, the day-to-day processes, how they go about rulemaking or something because of more White House control over a given independent agency? I mean, what could change at the FCC then?
Well, the first thing that came out that I think is going to be an example of how that's going to play out in the rest of this 4-year administration is that Chairman Carr is asked to say, what rules should we get rid of? What are the ones that we can cut back? Now, I haven't seen anybody fired from the FCC. You don't hear about the layoffs like you hear at departments of education, the IRS, and elsewhere. But I do think that there's going to be an effort, because it's been more of the conservative effort, to deregulate. And keeping internet service as an information service is considered deregulation. But there are other aspects that I think of regulation that are needed. One of the ones we could get into is poll attachments. I should have said that not only do I do communications and privacy, but poll attachments, because there are strict rules on what utilities can charge for broadband or telecommunications or cable to be attached to poles. And the issue of broadband being attached to poles and expanding broadband is, and this is really inside Beltway, maybe this is even inside, Northwest DC. There's a case pending in the DC Circuit, Mozilla, where the DC Circuit could come out the other way from the Sixth Circuit and create a conflict. They might say it's a telecom service, which is what, if you recall back in the day of the Brand X case, Justice Scalia said, hey, internet is a telecom service, but it's not. It's an information service. I don't think there's going to be any change.
Interesting. Yeah, well, these things do tend to get arcane, but we are the arcane inside Northwest type of station, so we're glad to have these discussions. But I imagine for the staff of the FCC, it must really be difficult because you don't know what policy is going to be year to year.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There has always been, as the change in administration and the appointment of a new chairman that's aligned with the political party of the president, so that there's always going to be a 3-2 vote. Pretty much anything that the chairman wants, the chairman can, achieve. And here we know the chairman, as an author of a chapter in Project 2025, is going to be aligned, despite the administration's, despite our president's disavowal that he's following Project 25. It seems pretty clear that that's guiding.
And could less independence of independent agencies mean more changing out of commissioners for the ones that have 5? Or there's statutes that say that 3 have to be from one party and 2 from the other. That's still in place.
Yes. And there's been, and we'll see this play out with the Federal Reserve. We'll see what happens there. I don't think he's made an effort to try to change them, but there's always been, even the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when you see so many others, there's overlap. When an administration changes, not everybody gets, changed out. They're not the political appointees that say, okay, you're gone, somebody new is in. There's been some consistency. So you're right, with change in administrations could make it more of a ping pong game now, that assuming that, the processes and the policies are not bipartisan, the ones that are partisan, could absolutely change.
And what you've written, too, is worth noting, that where there is a single agency, independent agency head, much more administrative power is concentrated in that person, and therefore the president should be more easily able to get rid of them. The case was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is not a commission, but an all-powerful chairman or director of the agency.
That was, and we've written about that too, and on our insights. And we have people that are former CFPB here in my law firm, and that was somewhat distressing because it was a congressionally created agency. So we're going to get to this point where it's going to have to be decided, when Congress creates an agency and there's an appointment, can you just, without cause, is it an at-will position, or is it only to be removed for cause? And okay, yes, I'll remind you just that when we heard the administration railing against judges who were disagreeing with the administration, that they should be impeached, that Chief Justice Roberts came out and said, which is not a usual thing to do, that's not the way impeachment works. You don't impeach a judge just because they disagree with you or stop you from doing what you're doing. That's their job. Their job is to interpret the law and apply the law. So I do think that there's going to be, at least at the Supreme Court, some recognition that it's not carte blanche to start removing these independent single agency heads.
And just a final philosophical question, because at the state level and to sometimes at the large municipal level, we've seen over the decades the growth of authorities like the Mass Bay Transit Authority or the authorities that control transportation in New York. And their bodies are not elected.